Well, welcome to the CPX podcast. Today with me is Bruce Baird, who is a former federal Liberal politician in the Australian Parliament, having been the member for Cook in Sydney from 1998 to 2007. In federal politics, he became well known for controversially opposing his own party on their policies regarding the detention of refugee women and children. And he's been recently appointed the chairman of the Refugee Resettlement Advisory Council by the Rudd Labor government, as well as being invited to head up a review of education services for overseas students. So you've got a lot on your plate, Bruce.
Yeah, there's a lot to do, and by this time of the year I'm feeling pretty exhausted because I sit on a whole number of boards, and then I've got these other government exercises as well. So yeah, enough to keep me working still.
But you're still getting in your morning swims, we hear.
Yeah, I try to do that whenever I can, and swim down the beach at Manly. Love being in the ocean. And not afraid of sharks, so it makes it all pretty good.
Now, you've had a very long career in politics. What first really drew you into that life? What attracted you?
It was something that I hadn't thought about in my teenage years. I love to party and I love to surf. And, I went to uni and not much more was happening. The Vietnam Wars made me think about issues, political issues, and later when I was in New York, I had a consul general there when I was the Australian Trade Commissioner who suggested to me the first time that I should think about going to politics. Later I heard a talk by an American Episcopalian priest on God has a plan for your life, and it was about committing the talents that we have to him and then just see what happens. And it wasn't that long after that I was pre-selected for the seat of Northcote in New South Wales politics, and things went from there.
There's two things in there I noticed: that your faith's been important and also international issues have been important. We'll come back to those things. But first up, what were the most satisfying aspects of political life?
Well, I think towering above my time in state politics was the fact I was Minister for Sydney's Olympic bid, and winning by a couple of votes against Beijing to host the 2000 Olympic Games was a huge highlight.
That was a very dramatic time, wasn't it? I know there were some huge issues around that bid. Can you talk us through some of those?
Well, it was, in the Dickens terms, it was the best of times and the worst of times, the worst political experiences I had and the best. It's a grubby, murky world, the Olympic politics, and try to stay above that, stay focused, keep the team together, and work hard despite the fact that a lot of people thought we weren't going to win, and I knew my political life was on the line with it. But that announcement, and the winner is Sydney, was certainly a fantastic experience. It was like skyrockets going off within me.
And it changed the pronunciation of Sydney forever, didn't it?
That's right, yeah.
You talk about the worst, though. What are you talking about? What are the terrible sort of things that happen in this
well, the worst was that during the Olympic bid as well, when I was accused of a bribery, basically, in a word, and that was the son-in-law of the Olympic member from Romania had taken a job at State Rail, and I had said, because he couldn't get a job in Australia, when we did the strategy meeting, I suggested he have an interview with State Rail, and he got the job. I wasn't part of the interviewing panel, nor did I direct them to appoint him, but the implication was that when it came out I had been involved, that it was a grubby little deal that I had put together. So the Herald in particular ran it big, and I was pursued, and the guy involved was pursued. He resigned his job. It was referred to ICAC. It was very nasty. So
your motives are always under scrutiny in politics, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I certainly had no idea at the time that I was doing anything wrong, and still don't believe I was doing anything wrong, because he got it on his own merits. He had 2 engineering degrees. But nevertheless, the perception can be very different.
The best of times, winning the bid's obviously fantastic, but when does politics shine?
It was also, in terms of my period in the federal parliament when we got the legislation changed for refugees, where a group of us brought in a private member's bill, and after long negotiations with the Prime Minister, we got a bill which put time limits in the processing of asylum seekers' applications for refugee status that excluded all children and families from behind razor wires and put them out into the community, and abolished temporary protection visas, which gave no rights to those who had been found to be refugees. So that was very satisfying, and in many ways more long-lasting than even the Olympic bid.
I want to get into the refugees question in a minute, but you've already mentioned your faith. How has it sustained your life? Not necessarily how has it come into your politics, but how does faith fit into the day-to-day life of Bruce Baird, the politician, the surfer, the family man?
Yeah. I think it gives me purpose, a sense that I know what I'm doing things for, that it's not just a random acts that I'm involved in, but it was a sense that God was calling me into politics, and that when I was there, I was his man, despite all my failings and faults and, and bad features that people will quickly point out. I had a sense that I was there for him, and therefore that transforms your life. And also my family had a sense that this was God's calling on us as a family, so that therefore there was no resentment when I was out a lot at night and doing political functions and speaking at dinners and etc. They knew why we were there.
Would you encourage a family member to go into politics?
It's, having said that, when my own son, Michael, was going to politics, I tried to discourage him, because I certainly was aware of the downside. And his mother said to me at one point, look, he has a passion for politics. I think you should just encourage him into it. So I did. And then I was out knocking on doors and handing out pamphlets, and he got in, which was very emotional.
Now, how does that faith come into your public life then? Are you aware of your Christian faith in the decision-making processes of politics?
Yeah, look, most things and pieces of legislation that come into politics, there is not, you can't say this is a Christian bill or not. Occasionally there will be ones which have implications, and quite often they have a conscience vote attached to them. But there are other things that where you have to think through, what should I as a Christian be doing about this? And that's what led me into the whole refugee area, because I just thought I cannot stand by and let people suffer to the way they did in terms of coming to this country.
So would you say your Christian faith was involved in that very famous decision of yours now to go against your own party's policy on refugees?
Yes, absolutely. When I went round to the detention centres on the Human Rights Committee, and was only on the Human Rights Committee because the chairman had invited me on and said, look, I need the numbers. Can you please come and join me? And and when I went round to the various detention centres, I was appalled by that. And, I was thinking of the parable of the Good Samaritan. And these were the people that were the flotsam and jetsam that had washed up on our shore. And, and I just really felt the Lord was saying, not in a physical sense, obviously, but just a reminder that to love your brother and your sister. But I'm saying, well, a lot of them are Muslims. And I just felt, these are your brothers, these are your sisters, look after them.
This is obviously a very hot political issue at the moment,
Yes.
with a number of boats carrying potentially asylum seekers. We don't know at this stage. It seems to me it's a question of imagination as much as anything else, imagining what kind of Australia we want to have. When you think of an Australian attitude to these people on boats coming here, what do you hope? What's your best hope for Australia?
I would hope that we would show compassion to people that understand what they've been through to and what motivates them to put their lives at risk and go on leaky boats and come to our shores. Now, look, there are people who rot the system who come here for economic reasons and so on, but the vast majority come here because they're under significant political persecution in their own country. and oppression, abused, and there's people, of course, who come from in the way organised by the UNHCR, United Human Rights Commission, which from camps, abused women. Women have been raped and tortured, and men who've been attacked, and young people who've been traumatised. And I just want to have a sense that Australia, which at the bottom line is a decent and generous country, would recognise that. By all means, let's make sure we don't kind of say, well, everybody can come. We want it to be in a decent, processed way that you do it. But nevertheless, at the bottom line, I'd love to see the compassion.
There's a lot of fear around this issue, of course, isn't there? There's a fear that we'll be swamped with refugees, but I'm told the numbers that we actually take in Australia are reasonably low. Is that true? 13,000, something like that? Have I got that
we
right?
take 13,500 a year, of which those who come on their own means and then claim asylum, including those in the boats and so on, is about 2,000. And the rest of them come from various camps around on the Thai border, and various minority groups, the Karen people, the Chin people, the Uyghurs, and of course right through up into Iraq and Afghanistan, Iran, and quite often Christians who come down and being oppressed, and of course into Africa and the Sudan and Congo. But I've had some contact with some amazing Christians who've been through the refugee camps, and just a great example of in the fire of these detention centres, their faith is strong and they hold up and they hold on to that. And I know quite a few of them. I went to the first guy that I got out of detention centre, a young Iranian Christian guy who had been rejected by our processing, both in his first request for asylum and his second one when they reviewed it. The file was eventually given to me by the minister because I had been approached about his case. And the reason, it was a Jewish guy who was working for me, and he went through the files and found the reason they haven't given him asylum is because they don't believe he's a Christian. He claimed he went to a house church and he can't identify the streets because he said it changed all the time. They think he was lying about that. So I went to see the minister, talked to him about it, spoke to the refugee applicant, and eventually got him out. And then that guy went to work in a factory at night, got himself educated, got into university, did engineering, completed his degree, got married to a lovely girl, went to the wedding, and he's a fine Christian who works as the interpreter at Blacktown Anglican Church, where he interprets for other Iranians. And it's a great story.
That is a great story. We're actually hearing a lot of discussion about this and the connection between theology and this issue at the moment. I mean, Some people are saying to the Prime Minister, who's a great fan of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, this is like Bonhoeffer protecting the Jews in the Second World War. Is that a fair comparison in your view?
Well, look, I am a friend of the Prime Minister, a personal friend, obviously not a political one, and I think he's very genuine and he's a great admirer of Bonhoeffer, as we all are, in terms of what he achieved. It's not easy for him being Prime Minister. When I was involved in my stand against refugees, he and Therese, his wife, used to phone me up and encourage me and in my stand. But it's very different. I know what it's like because I had a Conservative electorate, and when you have letters bombarding you and emails attacking you, do you think, well, how many boats are we going to have in this country? And it was, I think it was his attempt to address that issue, perhaps more processing offshore. It's not all automatic, right, that they're all going to head down to Christmas Island and be processed automatically. Obviously, it didn't work out the way the government would want it to. And I think they'll have to reconsider it. And for my money, I would have preferred them to bring the boat straight to Christmas Island. Even better to have them processed on shore. And there's reasons why they didn't. But anyway, I think I continue to pray for the Prime Minister and and his decisions. It's a tough role. And there is something that strikes at Australians when they see people getting off the boats. It's a inbuilt xenophobia of the hordes from the north or whatever it is. And in fact, far more people who claim asylum arrive by air. And of those that arrive by boat, 90% are actually found to be genuine refugees. About 50% of those who arrive by air and claim asylum. So, and of those that present security problems, I know the answer to it because I asked the head of ASIO in an inquiry in the Parliament, and the answer is zero. None of them were found. Of the several thousand that came over the 5-year period we're looking, there was none who presented security problems, because if you're a terrorist, you won't come in that way because you're subject to too many reviews and processes, and you'll have fake IDs and slide through as a tourist.
You've looked at this issue over a long period of time now, a few governments. Do you see the Australian public changing at all in their hearts, in their attitudes to refugees?
Well, I certainly found that during the time the Howard government was there was a distinct change. It started in the country, actually, of refugees going out and working in the country, and as country people got to know them, there was something about country people. They're down to earth, fair income. They can spot a phony a mile off. And they listened to their stories and they thought, these people are genuine. You know, I really feel sorry about what they've been through. And so it was the members from the country who were saying, I think we've got to rethink our attitude. People in my area are changing. And then it came through in others, even in conservative areas like mine, the attitude changed. And think, well, maybe they've got a point. Maybe we don't want children locked up. And if they're genuine, why don't we let them in? And of course, those who are not, I think everyone would say, well, they shouldn't be here if they're not genuine and they're not found to be so. There is, but when people see the boats arriving, something happens, and people get concerned about their own security. To a certain extent, that's understandable. But I think we need to remind them the numbers are relatively small, and we continue to be a country that accepts refugees, and the numbers we take are the same, 13,500 have been for a whole number of years.
There seems to be a choice to be made here between a kind of attitude of fear and protection and an attitude of generosity and compassion.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a question of protecting your borders, which every country wants to, and showing compassion. Now, I think the Prime Minister said that he wanted to be both strong on border protection but compassionate to those who come here. And it's a difficult mix, because at the one point you're trying to repel the boats coming down, and on the other point, when you come here, you want to treat them well, in a compassionate, humane way. You don't want to return to the old days where people were put in prisons within prisons and left there for a whole number of days, and people being called by numbers instead of by names, and no newspapers, no magazines, one television for hundreds of people, no sporting equipment, and just often bare dirt that was outside their huts.
No humanity, in other words.
No humanity. We want to move on from that.
You've got a difficult job ahead of you, Bruce Baird. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.